In a society that prizes endless communication, constant sharing, and showy openness, we've overlooked one of the strongest tools in human interaction: tactical quietness. While others are busy declaring their plans, sharing their thoughts, and exposing their tactics, the truly skilled individual understands when to stay quiet and uses that quietness as a tool. Niccolò Machiavelli, the 16th century Florentine thinker and political strategist, grasped this idea better than most. Although he is known for his direct advice in The Prince, Machiavelli's most powerful insights often relate to what should stay unsaid. "The common crowd is swayed by appearances," he wrote, acknowledging that talk creates appearances while silence preserves truth. In an era of excessive exposure, those who master tactical quietness not only safeguard their standing, but achieve what constant talkers cannot. They triumph. While others are still discussing victory, the cost of essential talk is high. Machiavelli lived in a time of political schemes where careless words could result in banishment or death. But even in our modern, less deadly environment, needless talk creates weaknesses that quietness avoids. People generally judge more by their eyes than by their hands, Machiavelli noted. Everyone can see, but few can truly understand. The person who talks non-stop gives everyone chances to see and judge while revealing little about what can truly be understood or known. Every word you say has costs that quietness does not. Talk creates obligations. When you state your intentions, you commit yourself to them in the eyes of others. If you change your plan, you seem inconsistent or dishonest. If you stay quiet about your plans, you keep the freedom to adjust without needing explanations or apologies. Talk reveals your thought process and limitations. The more you explain, the more you expose about how your mind works, information that others can use to predict, manipulate, or counter you. As Machiavelli observed, the first way to gauge a ruler's intelligence is to look at the people around them. Similarly, the first method to assess someone's strategic skill is to listen to how much they unnecessarily reveal. Compulsive talk reduces your mystique and authority. "It is much safer to be feared than loved," Machiavelli wrote. Fear needs distance, and distance needs a degree of mystery. A leader who explains every decision, justifies every action, and shares every thought becomes ordinary, and the ordinary cannot command the same respect as the extraordinary. Consider how this shows up in modern situations. The colleague who talks in every meeting, giving opinions on every topic regardless of expertise, gradually loses impact. The friend who shares every detail of their life on social media becomes predictable instead of interesting. The negotiator, who fills awkward silences with concessions, loses the upper hand. The leader who responds to every criticism legitimizes the critics, and in doing so, reduces their own status. Machiavelli would see our modern urge for transparency and constant communication not as authenticity, but as a strategic mistake. A voluntary surrender of power that gives information to others without getting equal value in return. The three kinds of tactical quietness. Machiavellian quietness is not just the lack of words. It is a deliberate communication tactic that takes different forms based on the goal. Understanding these types of quietness shows how this approach works in reality. First, quietness for gathering information. The wise person does immediately what the fool does eventually. The fool talks right away, revealing their position without learning anything about others. The wise person, however, stays quiet at first, letting others expose their thoughts, intentions, and weaknesses before deciding how to respond. This method creates an unequal information advantage in negotiations. It shows up in the idea that whoever talks first loses. In personal relationships, it explains why those who listen more than they talk tend to understand the situation better than the chatterbox. In competitions, it shows why those who announce their strategies before executing them often perform below their abilities. Second, quietness for building authority. Machiavelli understood that power partly relies on perception, and perception can be boosted through calculated quietness. A leader who only talks at key moments has more impact than one who gets involved in every small issue. Someone who only responds to necessary criticisms rather than defending themselves against every accusation shows confidence rather than insecurity. This explains why the most powerful people in any field tend to talk less, but more deliberately than those below them. Third, quietness for keeping ambiguity. Machiavelli's observation, "It is safer to be feared than loved when you cannot have both," extends far beyond simple emotions. His perspective encapsulates a strategy of ambiguity, one that applies to any situation where the lack of clarity can provide a tactical advantage. Politicians have long relied on this principle, crafting speeches and statements that deliberately remain vague, allowing different audiences to interpret the message as they wish. This is an art of appeal to multiple demographics without ever committing to a single stance. Negotiators, too, often find that an undefined position creates room for future discussions, leaving both sides open to more favorable terms without being bound by rigid commitments. Leaders, especially in business or politics, often articulate grand visions with a minimum of specifics. This keeps them from being boxed in by their words, offering them flexibility as circumstances change. The power of ambiguity lies in its ability to keep options open and control the direction of conversations, decisions, and actions, making it a valuable tool in the arsenal of anyone who must navigate complex or high-stakes environments. Ambiguity provides a buffer against the weight of premature decisions and allows for strategic recalibration. In essence, keeping things unclear enables the individual to retain power over future moves, keeping others guessing and thus in a position of lesser control. The skill of tactical quietness. Power, influence, and the illusion of transparency. Tactical quietness is not merely the absence of speech or a passive form of silence. It is a deliberate and strategic decision to withhold information when its release would do more harm than good. In a world that celebrates constant communication, where every thought, decision, and action is expected to be shared instantly, those who exercise restraint have an edge. Rather than being a form of dishonesty, tactical quietness is a mark of precision, signaling a deep understanding of the dynamics of power. Leaders who know when to remain silent are often those who understand the delicate balance between revealing enough to appear transparent and withholding enough to maintain an advantage. Clarity and openness may seem virtuous in a world obsessed with transparency, but rushing into full disclosure often leads to losing the ability to control the narrative. Silence, on the other hand, offers control over how much information is shared and when. In business negotiations, for instance, one who remains silent after making an offer allows the other party to reveal their position first, often uncovering information that could otherwise be hidden. Quietness at the right moment allows for more strategic power plays, offering a significant upper hand without the need to over-explain or overshare. The strategic choice to remain quiet can thus be more influential than any carefully crafted argument or persuasive speech. The trap of transparency. Transparency has become a buzzword in modern culture, often presented as a moral imperative. We are taught to value authenticity above all, to express our thoughts and emotions without restraint, and to avoid any form of concealment or ambiguity. The narrative surrounding transparency suggests that being open and honest is a sign of strength and integrity, as if the absence of secrets automatically equals authenticity. However, the reality is far more nuanced. Machiavelli, with his practical and realistic understanding of power dynamics, knew that transparency could become a trap. While honesty can be virtuous, it can also leave one vulnerable, revealing, too, much about one's intentions, weaknesses, and future plans. In the ruthless world of politics and business, transparency often works against the individual, particularly when it forces them into rigid positions that limit their flexibility. As Machiavelli pointed out, the promise was a necessity of the past, the broken word a necessity of the present. This statement recognizes that in order to maintain influence and control, flexibility is essential. The idea is not to advocate for deception, but to acknowledge that withholding certain information and leaving some things unsaid allows one to maintain power. Early transparency often leads to predictability, and predictability can be a severe disadvantage. By not revealing everything up front, one maintains a degree of mystery that can be strategically advantageous. The skill lies not in avoiding truth altogether, but in knowing when to withhold and when to reveal. The risk of constant exposure. In today's culture of perpetual exposure, social media has fueled an environment where constant sharing has become the norm. People feel compelled to document every moment, express every opinion, and make their personal thoughts public in real time. This environment of oversharing can be seductive, offering immediate gratification and validation. However, the constant urge to share can also come with significant costs, especially when it comes to personal power and influence. Machiavelli did not advocate for complete deception, but emphasized the importance of discretion. His words, "Never try to win by force what can be won by deception," can be reframed in the modern context as a warning about overexposing oneself. Never try to win with excessive sharing what can be achieved with tactical quietness. The problem is not that people are talking too much, but rather that they are talking indiscriminately. In the rush to be heard, many fail to realize that sometimes the more strategic choice is silence. In negotiations, for instance, those who speak too early risk giving away too much information, potentially losing their bargaining position. The true power lies not in talking endlessly, but in knowing when to hold back and let others reveal more about themselves. In an age where everyone is talking, those who can listen carefully, remain silent at the right times, and offer their thoughts sparingly are the ones who maintain control. The art of silence, then, becomes an essential tool for preserving influence and authority. The psychology of quietness. How mystery boosts power. Mystery has always held a certain allure. It taps into the human psyche, activating our curiosity and sparking a desire to solve puzzles. This psychological effect is not just a quirk of human nature. It is a strategic tool that has been employed by the most powerful figures throughout history. Whether emperors, military leaders, or modern CEOs, those who have mastered the art of leaving things unsaid are often the ones who hold the most sway. The ability to remain silent at crucial moments fosters uncertainty and forces others to speculate, thus shifting the control of the narrative. When someone withholds information or remains quiet after a key question or statement, it creates a vacuum that others are quick to fill with their assumptions. The power of uncertainty lies in the fact that, when faced with ambiguity, people tend to project their own desires, fears, or interpretations onto the unknown. In negotiations, for example, silence is often a powerful tactic. The negotiator who speaks last holds the advantage, as the silence before the response creates discomfort, causing the other party to reveal more than they intended. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer noted that most people, instead of rationally considering situations, often rely on their initial judgments. This tendency plays into the hands of those who master tactical quietness. By leaving gaps and avoiding immediate responses, they create space for others to make mistakes, which can later be leveraged for advantage. The cost of talking too much. How oversharing weakens authority. The dangers of excessive transparency are not limited to the political sphere or business negotiations. They extend into our personal lives as well. In a world where social media and constant connectivity have created a culture of oversharing, it is easy to forget that not all information is meant to be shared. Revealing too much too soon can backfire, giving competitors, colleagues, or even friends too much insight into your thoughts, plans, and vulnerabilities. This can diminish your strategic advantage and leave you open to manipulation or exploitation. In politics, the danger of talking too much is well known. Politicians who make sweeping promises or declare definitive plans without leaving room for flexibility risk alienating their supporters or becoming trapped by their own words. Business leaders, likewise, must avoid committing to specific future actions that can later be used against them. Even in everyday life, those who constantly talk about their plans without taking action lose credibility. The truth is, people are drawn to those who exhibit quiet authority, those who know when to speak and when to hold back. Oversharing weakens one's position, while maintaining silence allows room for growth, change, and adaptation. Whether in the political arena, the business world, or personal relationships, the ability to keep certain things to yourself enhances your power and preserves your autonomy.